Jim Peters on Peters Principles, and as you know, you never know who you're going to see on Peters Principles, and today we have the honor of having the mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for coming by.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. The obvious question for me, anyway, is how did you like the new courthouse dedication, and what's the new courthouse going to mean to us? And
I think the dedication of the new courthouse, I think, was exciting for everybody. I think a lot of people have been waiting a long time for there to be some construction up in the Hamilton Canal district, and so we should see that. I mean, it's going to be a long construction period. I believe it's going to take 36 months to finish the building, but it will be an impressive building when it's done. Mm-hmm. It's going to be 7 stories, and so it will be good, and hopefully that construction project will serve as a catalyst for other private construction in the same area. At least I think that's what our hopes are, is that other properties will go to construction as well, and that those will pop up soon.
Okay. Do you see what types of people do you see wanting to rent offices somewhere on Jackson Street?
I think that I still think that probably the best use for the properties up there would be small life science companies or small startup high-tech companies. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully, that's what you'll see there. I mean, I guess if it was perfect, if I had my dream, what I'd like to see is that it would develop into sort of a Kendall Square area. And by that, I don't mean that it would all be steel and glass buildings. I just mean that there would be commercial space on the first floor, commercial retail space on the first floor, and then offices above. And most importantly, that there would be some activity there in the evening rather than just during the day, so that it wouldn't just be, say, an industrial park. It would be more like something that had a nightlife to it as well. And I think that's what a majority of the city council would like to see up there too.
Okay, I think what we'll see is a lot of lawyers moving close to the courthouse. Does that scenario play out at all? Or?
I don't really know that will happen. I mean, I've talked to some attorneys who think that it doesn't matter, that you could almost get by with a virtual courthouse at this point, that a lot of stuff is done over the internet, and there's not as much need to be in close proximity to the courthouse as there once was. Okay. But I am confident that there will be some development in that area, and that some of that will spawn off of the courthouse. One of the things that I mentioned at the groundbreaking is I endorsed the state delegation's recommendation that the courthouse, the Justice Center, be named after Judge Cannon, and I hope that is how it plays out.
So, what Judge Cannon is?
Judge Cannon was a lifelong resident of Lowell. He was on the school committee for a short time, then became a state representative, had a very distinguished career as a state representative. Yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I didn't realize that's what you're talking about.
Yes. Had a very distinguished career as a state representative, and then also was a longtime judge at the Lowell District Court. And he's someone that's been overlooked for, someone that had a major impact in the city and the development of the city, and who's been overlooked for a long time. And so, I hope that the delegation's recommendation goes through, and that the building is in fact named for him.
I had him. It's good. Just kind of an aside, but I had him help me write a paper once on his duties as a state representative.
Okay.
And he would slip into an Irish brogue when he was talking about an Irish person.
Yeah.
And he would slip into an Italian accent when he was talking about an Italian person, and
yeah,
it was as funny as could be. And the net result of his work with me was that I got an A+ on the paper.
Okay.
And that was quite an accomplishment for me.
So you went to the right guy.
I went to the right guy. Yeah. So I knew him personally, and we got together a few times. And I think that it probably is a little bit overdue.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it's overdue. But you know, I knew him back when I was first on the city council, when I was in my younger days, and he, you know, he spent a lot of time with me, gave me a lot of good advice, and was very generous with his time, and I appreciate that even now, probably more so now than I did back then.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was too. I actually had a friendship with F. Bradford Morris too.
Oh, okay.
So it was Connie Kiernan and F. Bradford Morris, and they were. I called Mr. Morris Brad, and I called Connie Kiernan Connie, and
yeah,
you know. So so we were. It was a really good experience for me, and they were two incredible people. The issue of I want to just jump to the school committee for a minute. The issue of $11 million out of district placements for students who can't get help in Lowell,
yes,
came up. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and you know, in going through the budget earlier this year, you know, we have a tight budget for the school committee, but if there's going to be any wiggle room or room for expansion, it's certainly by addressing that problem. We do spend approximately $11.5 million a year in outside placements, and in addition to that, we spend another $1.3 million to transport those outside placements. So it's a lot of money, and there is an effort underway with the school department now to try to bring a good amount of those students back into Lowell, and have them go to school in Lowell, which would result in a tremendous savings, several $1 million for the school department,
right,
and would also cut down the transportation costs considerably.
Okay. And the transportation cost, I was told, was $1.3 million.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a significant transportation cost. Although I also heard that from the transportation person at the school department that we spend $57 million a year on transportation, on busing for students.
7.8 million. 7.8 million.
I must have thought it was 57 million. Okay. I was sure he said it was a lot more than that. Okay, so we spent $7 million for that.
7.8 for transportation, and out of that, 1.3 of that is for the outside placement. So, you know, that's another area where we could probably do some savings. In my analysis of the budget, the two places where we could look to save money would be in the outside placements, the out-of-district placements of students, and also in transportation.
Okay.
Just transportation in general.
Transportation is expensive.
It is expensive, and I'm not so sure that we do it as efficiently as we could. I do think it's probably worth a study to see whether or not we could do it more efficiently and maybe save some money there.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I was just wondering about this. The city council, now, if memory serves me right, you came out kind of against this, but the city council voted to raise for the next city council?
What I had suggested, there was a movement early on in this term to try to do something about the idea that we have a preliminary election when we only have 19 candidates. Mm-hmm. And so one of the solutions that was put forth is to raise the level at which that would trigger a preliminary election, mm-hmm. From 18, where it is right now, up into, well, there were different numbers, but I think as high as 24, which would have created a long ballot. If there were 24 people on the November ballot running for city council, that would be a very long ballot and probably would just lend itself to confusion. I looked at the problem a little differently. Rather than that we should be concerned that there's a preliminary because we only have 19 candidates, right. What we really should be concerned about is that there's only 19 candidates, right. And that the city council, election for city council is not drawing many more candidates than that. When I first ran for city council, which was quite some time ago, there would be 34, 26 candidates,
Right.
and even that was low compared to let's say the decades before that. But it's a much more expensive endeavor now than what it was back then. But nevertheless, what we really need to make sure that what we have is a good field of quality candidates to choose from. And so what I suggested to the City Council Subcommittee is that they look at raising the stipend for city councilors. And I provided the subcommittee with a survey of 19 different cities in the Commonwealth and what those city councilors make now. And I excluded Cambridge and excluded Boston just because they're special in that regard, and nobody makes the kind of money that a Cambridge or a Boston city councilor makes.
Right.
But the other cities that were in the survey were either small or comparable to Lowell. And so the subcommittee, in its wisdom, has recommended to the full city council that the city council salary go up from $15,000 to $25,000, and that the school committee salaries go from $6,000 to $12,000. The mayor's salary, which right now is based on the city council salary plus the school committee salary, would go just to $30,000. So it would just be $5,000 more for being the mayor. This won't go into effect until the next council is elected.
Right.
I won't be the mayor then, and I'm not sure right now whether or not I would be on the city council then, but I do think that it's necessary. I think it's been a long time since we've looked at that issue of increasing the stipend for city councilors, and I truly am hoping that if we have a public hearing on it tonight and there'll be a vote on it tonight, and if that goes through, I am hoping that that the result next year is that there will be a large field of quality candidates running for city council and for school committee too.
I think that it probably will help a little bit in terms of getting people out to run. But I also think that people run for various reasons that don't have anything to do with how much money is being paid.
Nobody runs for the city council or the Lowell School Committee to get rich.
Right.
Absolutely. And even with these increases, they're still not going to do that. But for the time and effort that you put into both running for the office and holding the office, because it's really more than just going down to a school committee meeting or a city council meeting down at City Hall like once a week or once every 2 weeks. It's a lot more involved than that. And so we'll see what happens. But I am confident that there will be more candidates for both offices, school committee and for city council, if this goes through this evening.
Well, I think that just in the way of a history, when my father ran, which is when you started running, when my father ran, it was $4,000.
Yes.
And it was $4,000 for something like 60 years.
Yes.
So it had been since 1910. And the reason it had been $4,000 in 1910 was because $4,000 was close to the equivalent of $40,000 in 1969 or 72 or whenever my father was elected. And they just kept it at $4,000 because nobody wanted to be the one to
That's right.
bring it up. So that it is probably below where it should be, but people don't realize that there's a history to the entire thing, too. And
right, it's more than. If I can shed a little more light on that, the city council is back at the time that you're talking about, which would have been in the 70s and early 80s, I think. City councils made $4,000. The school committee didn't make any money. They weren't paid at all, and many school committees weren't paid. And back at that time, I proposed an increase then. And at that time, in the early 80s, the city council salary was raised from $4,000 to $6,000, and the school committee, I think, was paid $3,000. And the mayor, I think the mayor was at $7,500. But I believe that's how it was.
I think you're right.
And and there was that was somewhat controversial, even doing that, which is probably why it stayed at $4,000 for as long as it did.
Well, I remember I went to the meeting to raise the subcommittee meeting to raise the amount, and I looked at Dick Howe and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, I had no status, you know, I was just there to watch. And I don't know why he asked me what I thought, but I said, "Well, you better earn it." And he gave me the dirtiest look that I could possibly get. So, and as you know, Dick Howe could give some pretty dirty looks if you wanted
Yes.
to. So you think that more people will run as a result of?
That's the hope. I mean, that's the point. It isn't so that. That's the point. It's just to get more people to run. So we'll see if that does it. But I'm hoping that it does. And then, you know, if you have 25, 26 people running or 30 people running for city council, the issue of how many people should there be in order to trigger a preliminary election would be moot at that point.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think of the development of outside businesses in Lowell? I mean, Kronos just moved back into Lowell and had been in Lowell for a while, from their inception to a while ago, and they moved to Chelmsford, and they just moved back to Lowell in the towers. What's your opinion on Kronos, General Electric coming to Boston, and the one that took over Prince Spaghetti?
Markley,
and then the one that's on Chelsea Street. I want to say Microsoft, but that's not it. The one on Chelsea Street that has a corporate headquarters there.
Okay.
What's your take on all this development? I mean, it seems like it's great. I
think it is good. I mean, you know, the GE thing is for Boston, but I'm hoping that there's a spinoff and that the city, you know, might benefit from that. Kronos, the way I look at Kronos is this. Kronos is going into the Wang Towers. So it isn't as if it's new development. But a company like Kronos they're a company that should attract other people. If Kronos is coming to Lowell, then there's other people that would want to go to Lowell because Kronos is in Lowell. And so for that reason, I hope that they also act as a magnet to attract more industrial development than what we have now. And that's really what we're, I think, looking for is industrial development in terms of economic development more than residential development, because with that comes jobs. And you know, the unemployment in Lowell right now is 5%, which is about equal to the national rate, but it's higher than the rate in Massachusetts in general. So I think that we're doing well, but I think that we can do better.
Okay. I'm just pleased to see businesses spending money in Lowell. I mean, the one that I'm thinking of is the one on at the old Hood plant by the train station. Sal.
Oh yes.
Is Lepori? Is that his name?
Yeah, that development there in the old Thorndike factory outlet building. Yes.
Yeah, he's going to put it on the tax rolls, which is good.
Absolutely. You know, anything that comes on, that's kind of what it is all about, really, is just broadening the tax base. If we're going to continue to provide quality services throughout the city and keep taxes low, the only way that we can do that is by expanding the tax base. So we have to be constantly hungry for more economic development and to expand the tax base.
How is what's the effect of the Lloyd overpass coming down going to be?
I don't know. I think that the Lloyd overpass design is needs a little rework to see how that's going to go. The design that the city council looked at most recently, I don't think really wasn't going to work out all that well. So the challenge is to create a smooth traffic pattern from the connector into the downtown, but also to make to connect the Highlands and the Acre to the Central Business District and to the Hamilton Canal District in that area, so to make it be more walkable as well. And that is a challenge.
It seems to be. Let's jump back to the schools for a minute. What's your take on charter schools?
I have a motion on the city at the city council meeting this evening, asking that the city auditor provide the city council with a report on the financial impact that the charter schools have had and will have on the city of Lowell and on the Lowell School Department. And you know, I would want to wait until the auditor provided the city council with that study, but I'm pretty confident that what it's going to show is that the charter schools for Lowell have a negative impact. But I think that, you know, the only objection that most people have to charter schools is the funding. If there was if it didn't impact the funding of the public school system, I don't think anybody would be opposed to charter schools. Charter schools in themselves are a good thing. It's just that they end up having a negative impact, not on every community maybe, but in communities like Lowell.
Yeah, well, in communities like Lowell, I was just talking to Paul Georges yesterday, and he was saying that the charter schools are basically financed by, if I got him right, if I understood him correctly, are basically financed by Wall Street, and that they're looking for education for profit.
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth in that, and but I think overall, you know, to have another option to, if you're a parent, and certainly the charter schools provide another option for parents, and that in itself isn't a bad thing. But I think what Paul was probably talking about in part is that the campaign in favor of question 2 is being fueled by the money for that is coming from Wall Street,
right?
And so it absolutely is for profit. And I think that, you know, one of the reasons that I asked the auditor to do a report like that is because I think sometimes those questions that end up on the ballot bring about some confusion. You know, in Lowell, the city council has passed a resolution in opposition to more charter schools, lifting the ban on charter schools, and so is the school committee done the same thing. And they've done it for that reason, because it has a negative impact on the Lowell school system.
It seems that it has a negative impact on the Lowell school system, and I'm not in favor of charter schools myself, and as you know, Peter's Principles is about Peter's Principles, which is just my opinion. And my opinion is that charter schools are, well, they're depleting the natural progression of people who used to go to Catholic schools, and they're going to charter schools instead.
Yes.
Because it's a public school environment.
Yes, and we do have several parochial schools in the city that are in financial trouble,
right.
And they're struggling. So, you know, what you're saying, I think, is correct. So hopefully, you know, we'll see what happens in November with that ballot question. But I think it would be good for everybody to know exactly what the impact is on question 2 before November. And so I'm anxious to get the report from the city auditor.
Oh, well, yeah, that should be helpful. What is the status of the superintendent? A school committeeman told me this morning that he was being reviewed, in the process of being reviewed.
Yes, where the school committee is right now doing a review of the superintendent, and that should be out. That probably will be out in December, I would think, or maybe November. And then on top of that, the school committee has asked me to negotiate a contract with the superintendent. Superintendent has a memorandum of understanding right now, but you know, there was a motion put forth by a school committee member and passed by the school committee, I believe unanimously, if I remember correctly, asking that the mayor negotiate a contract with the superintendent. So I'm in the process of doing that now, and I'm hoping to have that wrapped up pretty soon.
So they gave you the responsibility of coming up with the form?
Well, to actually come up with the contract.
With the contract.
Yes,
okay.
but I mean, I'm not doing that in a vacuum. I've consulted with every member of the school committee and with the superintendent on the contract. So I think that we're pretty close to having something that should be palatable for a majority of the school committee and acceptable to the superintendent.
There is a theory that as the new courthouse comes on, it becomes available, that some of the old courthouses will house schools. Have you heard of that one, or?
I haven't heard that. I mean, I think there's probably first of all, we're 3 years away
Right.
before the new courthouse will be ready. But when it is, it will free up 3 different buildings. The Superior Courthouse on Gorham Street, the District Courthouse on Hurd Street, and 89 Appleton Street, which is privately owned.
Right.
Those buildings, so let's leave Appleton Street off to the side and just deal with the District Court and the Superior Court on Hurd and in Gorham Street respectively. Both of those buildings, I'm not sure that they would lend themselves to use for a school without a considerable reconfigurement and rehabilitation.
Yeah, you don't want the Herman Miller style.
No, and I don't know that Hurd Street is a good place for a school. Right? I mean, it's one thing to have the high school down there, but to have another school, I'm not really for lower grades. I'm not really sure that would be a good thing to do. I do think that there's been several other ideas that have been floated around. One is that the university would take over Hurd Street and maybe put an art school there. And I think that would be a wonderful idea. I think that would I think that would have a big impact on the downtown if there were a whole bunch of art students downtown on a regular basis. The Superior Court is a different, there's the rear part of the Superior Court, which is not the part that faces Gorham Street, but the part in back that's brick, I believe is a historical building. And so that will present additional challenges. And if you're familiar with that property, there is a good yard around that property. So
Right.
it's really that's a big parcel, really.
It supposedly was built in 1848. It is what I've heard. I don't know if that's correct or not.
That sounds pretty close.
It
but
was like Daniel Webster spoke there or did cases there.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
Yeah, they said that at the
around
groundbreaking.
1848.
Yeah. If we could just go back to the groundbreaking just for a minute.
Sure.
The groundbreaking was an exciting event, and I think everybody was really happy to see that finally there was going to be some construction and some activity there. But several weeks ago, we also lit up the swamp blocks.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And that was really that was a pretty exciting evening itself. We did that at night, and it was only done for one night just to see what it would look like. But I think everybody was very enthusiastic about and excited about the way that looked. And as you know, there's a whole committee that's looking at lighting up different parts of the canals
Right.
in order to create, another attraction to want to come into Lowell and to downtown Lowell. And the swamp blocks will be part of it. And that really that does a lot for in terms of dressing up that area.
Mm-hmm.
It is another reason why people should want to do development there. I mean, that Hamilton Canal area is great for several different reasons. One is that it's adjacent to the Central Business District, but more important than that, it's within easy walking distance of the train. For commuters, and also within easy driving distance from the Lowell Connector. As you know, it's a short jump from the end of Lowell Connector to that area.
To that area.
Yeah.
It's less than a mile.
Yeah.
It's maybe a half a mile. It's very, very doable. I'd like to thank you for coming on.
Thank you
the
for
show.
having me.
And we really enjoy having you here. And I hope to see you in 3 months. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good. Thanks.
Thanks. And this has been Mayor Edward Kennedy, and this has been Peter's Principles. So have a good night.